Hey guys, it's Luke Yon, and today I am going to be doing my December wrap-up. I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in December. I have a bunch of videos that I have to film for like end of year, beginning of the year stuff, so I'm excited about that. But obviously I do have to talk about the books that I read in December. I read a few books. I read like, I don't know how many books, at least 10 I think in December. A lot of them were reread zone, a lot of them were short stories, so this is probably going to be a little bit of a shorter wrap-up, but let's just get into it. So if you watched my November wrap-up, you'd know that I was rereading the Shatter Me series this month, and I finished up that, obviously starting with Restore Me by Tahereh Mafi. I still loved this book on reread. I think it was an amazing way to like start off the continuation of the series. I'm sure you know, like, I don't love the continuation of the series, like, as much as the original. But I think this was a great way to extend the story. I love the character development in this book, and I love the dual POV. I think the plot in here is so interesting, and yeah, I just really, really love this story. I think it was a really interesting way of, like, starting something new, but also continuing something old. So yeah, I love this book so much. The writing is, like, just like it was in the original, and yeah, I really love this one. So, 5 out of 5 still. Then I obviously read Shatter Me, which I really enjoyed as well. I think I enjoyed the novellas a lot more this time around, so I gave Shatter Me 4 out of 5 stars. I really was able to appreciate Kenji's voice in this one a little bit more, and his like inner conflict and kind of just what he's dealing with personally. I thought that was a lot more interesting this kind of reread. And, yeah, I really enjoyed this story and him as a character, and I really liked how it, like, told certain scenes from Restore Me from his perspective. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then moving on to the problematic child of the series, Defy Me, which is, and will probably definitely always be my least favorite book in the series. If you're interested, I actually did do full, like, Goodreads reviews for all of my rereads. I don't usually do that for rereads, but I did with this series. And my review for Defy Me is, like, spoiler-filled, so there's a lot of spoilers in there, obviously. But if you want, like, a more in-depth review of this book, you can go check that out there. But, yeah, this book, I do have a lot of issues with it. I think that it was really weird, like the character development and stuff in this book. There was weird time skips. I just think that there were so many opportunities that this book could have taken advantage of that it didn't. I feel like it kind of just fell flat. I feel like, I don't want to, like, insult Tahereh Mafi, obviously, but I feel like, I don't know, she kind of dropped the ball. Like, there were a lot of things that could have been done with this story. There were a lot of things that could have happened, and just really, really cool things that could have been done with this installment, and I just feel like it was very, like, it felt kind of, like, phoned in. It felt a little bit like a first or second draft. So yeah, that was, like, my main problem with this book in the series, but as I said, you can definitely check out my Goodreads review. Then moving on to Reveal Me, this is the second novella in the second half of the series, and it's the second novella from Kenji's perspective, and I really enjoyed this one as well. I think I bumped it up to 3 or 4 stars. I really liked this book. I thought it was an interesting way to bridge book 5 and 6. I liked the whole thing with Kenji and Nazira, and I really loved the way that it led into Imagine Me. And speaking of Imagine Me, obviously the next book that I read was Imagine Me by Tahereh Mafi. And I still really love this book. I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a great way to, like, end off the series. I thought it was a great finale. I loved Juliet and Kenji's perspective in this book, and I know a lot of people were disappointed that we didn't get Warner's perspective, but I do kind of get it. Like, obviously Tahereh Mafi has explained it, but I feel like with this reread I was able to understand it a lot more, and I really loved Juliet and Kenji's dual perspective. I love Juliet's story in this book, and just all the stuff with Kenji, and it felt like this book was really going back to the original series, where it was like dealing with all the side characters that we love, and all of that, and it was really long, and I really loved it, and I read it super fast, and this was definitely, I think, my favorite read of this book. I think for this whole reread, except for Defy Me, I liked each book, like, a lot more. And I already loved this one, but I really loved it even more. I actually do have a full reading blog for this book, which I can link in the description box below, but I also did that Goodreads review, so you can check all of that out if you want to. And then I finished off my reread of the series with a reread of Believe Me, which is the novella at the end of the series that is, well, I don't want to spoil it, but it basically just continues like the epilogue from Imagine Me and all that. I have a very in-depth review of this one on Goodreads as well that I wrote the first time that I read it. And this one, I don't think I enjoyed it more this time around. I kind of just felt the same about it. 3.5. It was interesting, but I don't think it was like necessary to the series. It was nice to read and revisit the characters and everything, but I don't think it was like, you know, I don't think it needed to happen. But it was nice to kind of just, again, revisit everything. It feels very like A Court of Frost and Starlight. Like, this is to the Shatter Me series as that was to the Akatar series. So, yeah, it's kind of like just another add-on book. You don't have to read it, but I feel like if you're a huge fan of the series and you really want to see how things finish, then you can pick this up. Then I did another reread. I actually don't have this book with me. It's in the other room, but I reread Whichwood by Tahereh Mafi. I really wanted to read this book over Christmas, over my break, and I really enjoyed it this third time, I think, that I read it. I reread Furthermore earlier in the year, and I wanted to reread this one, obviously, because it's very wintry, and this book follows a young girl named Laylee who lives in this town called Witchwood, and she is what is called a morticior, so she is tasked with washing the, like, dead bodies in the town to kind of cleanse them before they move on to the afterlife, and we kind of get the main characters from Furthermore back in here, and it's this whole sort of ordeal, and I really enjoyed this book. It took me a little while to read it just because I was kind of sick and not in the best mood when I was reading it, but I do really love it, and I love this middle grade series, and I think it's a super solid 4-star read. After that, I read a short story called Booked for Christmas by Sandhya Menon, and I gave this book 3 stars. It follows a romance author who has, her arch nemesis is this book critic that always kind of tears her books apart, and one day he ends up coming to a Christmas party that she has, and they end up getting snowed in together, so they have to kind of spend this time together. It was a cute short story. I definitely enjoyed it. I feel like it would have been better as a full-length novel because I feel like it could have been fleshed out a lot more, but I do think it was a very solid book, or short story, and I definitely want to read more of Sandhya Menon's romance books because I really liked the way that she wrote about the 2 main characters. Then I finally got around to reading a book that has been on my TBR for so long. I've been meaning to read it every Christmas and I never get around to it, but I finally did, and that was The Afterlife of Holly Chase by Cynthia. And I cannot believe I finally read this book. I'm so proud of myself, but this book is a kind of a retelling, reimagining of A Christmas Carol, and it follows a main character named Holly Chase, who is a horrible person. She is like 17 or 16 years old, and she's just really awful. Her dad is a movie producer, and her mom has passed away, so the book kind of opens up with her reminiscing about her stepmother's death, and Holly is just not great. You know, she's like the typical Ebenezer Scrooge type, but in like modern day, and she basically gets visited on Christmas Eve by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and they try to get her to change her ways, but she doesn't, so she ends up dying, and the book picks up 5 years later, where she is still working at Project Scrooge as the ghost of Christmas past, and the new Scrooge that they're working on this year is a boy named Ethan, and as Holly kind of gets to know him a little bit more and kind of prepare for this Christmas where she's going to be his ghost of Christmas past, she decides that she might want to kind of change her ways a little bit. And I really, really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a little bit slow in like the very middle, but I think that I just love the concept of this book. I think it's so clever. I love how A Christmas Carol is like interwoven to the story. And I love all of the references. Like they always have to have a Tiny Tim, and they always have to have like a Bella, I think is what they called it. And I have read A Christmas Carol, but I completely forgot like what happened. Obviously I know like the general story, but I do definitely need to reread that probably next Christmas. But I just loved how the original was incorporated into this story. I really liked the characters. I think Holly was really interesting and well developed. I love Cynthia Hand. I've read a few of her books, and 2 of them I rated 5 out of 5 stars, and I love. And this one I also really enjoy. So she is a great author. I really, really love her books. I love the way that she builds her characters. I think the plot of this book, again, while I said it was a little bit slow in the middle, it definitely picked up, and I loved the ending of this book. I know a lot of people, like, it's a very divisive ending, but I really loved it. I thought it was a great way to, like, conclude the story and wrap everything up, and I'm super happy that I finally got around to reading this book. And then the only 2 other books that I read in December were 2 little picture books. The first was Frosty the Snowman. This is just like a print version of the story. And obviously I love this book. And then The Christmas Hat, which I reread every single year. It was one of my favorite stories as a kid, and I always like to read it as my last book of the year. And this is a 5 out of 5 stars, obviously. I absolutely love it. And yeah, so that is it for my December wrap-up. My December wrap-ups are always a little interesting because I'm always like, I don't know, I always like end up reading a bunch of short stories and like fun Christmassy things. But that is it for this video. I would love to know what books you all read in December, and if you read any of the books that I read this month, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. All my social media links are in the description box below, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!